My family said I failed. But then her fiancé recognized me. Hi, I'm Amanda, and today I'm sharing a story that's as bittersweet as it is empowering. It's the kind of story that makes you reflect on who you are and who deserves a seat at your table. This is the story of Rachel. Rachel was at home, sitting in her sunlit home office, debugging a piece of code for a major client when her old Gmail chimed. That inbox was practically a time capsule, one she hadn't touched since high school. Curious, she glanced at the screen. Subject line, Wedding Invitation, Lily and Brian Moore. Her heart gave a quick, reluctant flutter. The sender? Lily Carter, her younger sister. Rachel hadn't spoken to her family in 12 years. Not since the day she'd packed up her life at 18 and walked away, leaving behind a house that had never really felt like home. Still, she clicked. The digital invitation was laced with soft blush roses and elegant gold lettering. Lily and Brian Moore request the pleasure of your company at their wedding celebration. Saturday, June 15th at 6 p.m. at the Grand Ballroom, Riverside Hotel. Below the formal script was a note, not stiff, not overly emotional, just personal. Hi, Rachel. I hope this message finds you well. I'm sorry to reach out using this old email, but I don't have your number anymore. I'm getting married next month, and despite everything, I really want you to be there. It would mean a lot to me. Lily. Rachel stared at the screen for what felt like an hour. Lily had been just 16 when she left. Spoiled, immature, and undeniably the golden child. Could she really have changed? Part of Rachel wanted to hit delete, but another part, maybe the part that still wondered what family was supposed to feel like, decided to reply. She kept it short. Congratulations, Lily. I'll be there. Looking forward to seeing you after all these years. Rachel. And just like that, the countdown began. Preparing for the trip wasn't hard. Rachel had long since built a life of independence. She owned a tech company, had a dedicated assistant, and a personal net worth sitting north of $30 million. But that wasn't something her family knew. She picked out a tasteful gift, a $1,500 crystal vase from Tiffany's, expensive enough to show care, but not so bold that it screamed wealth. She booked her flight, packed a navy blue dress, sleek, modest, perfectly tailored, and reserved a suite at the Marriott downtown, just blocks from the Riverside Hotel where the wedding would take place. The night before the ceremony, she ordered room service and tried to steel herself. Would her parents act like nothing had happened? Would Lily actually welcome her, or was this just for show? She considered calling, but no, tomorrow would come soon enough. The morning of the wedding, Rachel woke early and went for a jog around the familiar streets of her old hometown. The place hadn't changed much, just like the people probably. Back at the hotel, she showered, styled her hair into a clean updo, and slipped into her dress. Pearl earrings, a simple clutch, and the Tiffany's box in hand. She arrived at the Riverside Hotel right on time. The same grand chandeliers, the same polished floors. It was like walking into a memory she'd left behind. As she stepped into the ballroom, heads turned. Familiar faces, aged a bit, some grayer, some rounder, but the same eyes. Aunt Diane, Uncle Frank, Cousin Melissa. One by one, they greeted her with awkward smiles and overly enthusiastic hugs. But something was off. There was a look in their eyes. Pity. You look better than I expected, Aunt Diane said, smiling just a little too tightly. Did you ever find a place to live? Uncle Frank asked. Heard you had it rough, said another cousin, eyes darting to her shoes. Rachel blinked. What were they talking about? She didn't have time to ask. Lily's ceremony was about to begin. Rachel looked for her place card, but didn't find it near the family table, or the center, or even in the middle. It was in the back corner of the ballroom. The closest tables are for close family and, well, the more successful guests, her mother whispered with a rehearsed smile. Rachel sat down quietly, letting it all sink in. She remembered now why she had cut contact in the first place. The favoritism, the lies, the fact that at 18 her parents kicked her out, told her college wasn't an option, and handed every opportunity to Lily. And yet, here she was, unwanted, misjudged, out of place, until Lily's fiancé took the microphone. Wait, are you Rachel Carter? As in Carter Nova Systems, the software giant? The room went silent. Every eye turned. Rachel nodded. Oh my God, he beamed. You're a legend. Your software transformed our entire backend at my company. I read about you in Forbes, Google, Microsoft, Amazon. You've worked with them all. The whispers started. Her parents looked like they'd seen a ghost. Her sister? Pale as her wedding dress. Suddenly, everyone wanted to talk to Rachel Carter. But when her mother came rushing over to invite her to the front table, where she belonged, Rachel just smiled and said, "No thanks, Mom. I'm comfortable right where I am." And she meant it, because real success isn't about recognition. It's about knowing your worth, even when the people who should have seen it first never did. And sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't loud. It's elegant, quiet, and dressed in navy blue. After the run, Rachel returned to her hotel room, showered, and spent the afternoon in quiet reflection. She curled up on the sofa with a paperback, one she'd read a dozen times before, and let the television hum in the background. But no matter how hard she tried to relax, the weight of the evening loomed. By 4 p.m., it was time. She stood in front of the mirror with practiced focus, applying her makeup with care. Nothing too bold, just enough to bring out her eyes and smooth over the edges of time. Her hair went up in a soft, simple twist. The navy dress she chose hung beautifully, elegant, understated, and exactly the message she wanted to send. Confident, composed, and unbothered. Pearl earrings, the same pair she'd worn at her company's first investor pitch years ago, completed the look. She slipped on nude heels, grabbed the Tiffany box from the dresser, and exhaled. Then she called a taxi to take her to the Riverside Hotel. The building hadn't changed. It still stood proudly near the river's edge, its brick facade glowing under the warm June sun. The same ornate chandeliers still hung in the grand entrance. The same scent of polished wood and fresh linens lingered in the air. As she walked down the long carpeted hallway toward the grand ballroom, she could hear music and laughter, classic wedding sounds filled with cheer and polite conversation. The door opened, and suddenly she was in the middle of it. 8 dozen memories hit her at once: birthday dinners, anniversary toasts, family friends making small talk. But now, they looked at her like a stranger. "Aunt Diane," Rachel said, her voice calm but friendly. Her aunt turned, eyes widening. "Rachel? Oh my goodness, is that really you?" she exclaimed, pulling her into a warm but slightly hesitant hug. Rachel smiled. "It's me. You look wonderful, Aunt Diane." Aunt Diane's eyes scanned her from head to toe, lingering a little too long. "Oh, honey, you look good too. Actually, better than I expected." There it was, better than expected. Before she could ask what that meant, Uncle Frank shuffled over with a drink in hand. "Well, I'll be damned. You actually came," he said with a nervous chuckle. "We figured Lily invited you, but didn't know if you'd show." "I'm here," Rachel said simply. "Good to see you, Uncle Frank." He nodded and shifted uncomfortably. "So, how are things with you? Your mom mentioned you were, having trouble finding an apartment. Ever get something stable? And work. Did that job thing pan out yet?" Rachel's brows lifted in disbelief. She owned a 5-bedroom home in the suburbs with a heated driveway and custom home theater. She ran a multi-million-dollar company. Where in the world was this coming from? "I'm doing just fine, Uncle Frank. Thanks for asking." But before she could press further, Aunt Diane leaned in with a conspiratorial whisper. And your husband? Did things work out there, or... Rachel blinked. What husband? Her aunt and uncle exchanged a look. Oh, well, we just heard. Never mind, dear. We're just happy you're here. Really? The arm pat felt more like a pity tap. Rachel kept her smile glued on, even as more relatives made their way over. Faces from childhood, high school, and the blurred years before she left home. Every conversation had the same undercurrent. Everyone treated her like a tragic figure who'd somehow managed to scrape herself together enough to attend the wedding. Then came Melissa, her cousin, glowing with suburban bliss and status. Rachel, wow, it's been forever, Melissa gushed, looping her arm around a man who must have been her husband. Hey, Jen, how have you been? Good. Married now, obviously, she said, wiggling her left hand to flash a diamond. 2 kids. We just bought a house in Westfield. You know, living the dream. That's great. I'm happy for you. Melissa tilted her head slightly. So, are you still... Did you ever get back on your feet? After everything? Rachel's heart thumped. After everything? I'm not sure what you mean, she said carefully. Oh, never mind, Melissa smiled tightly. I'm just glad you're here. Lily will be thrilled. As she turned away, Rachel stood rooted in place. A slow-burning realization began to unfold. They didn't just forget about her. They rewrote her. To them, she was a failure, a family rumor, a shadow of who she used to be. And someone, likely her own parents, had made sure that narrative stuck. She swallowed the growing knot in her throat and began looking for her seat. She scanned the tables near the front. Nothing. Middle section? Still nothing. Then, finally, in the farthest corner of the room, almost behind a floral pillar, she spotted her name card. A single seat tucked beside distant cousins and elderly guests she barely recognized. Just as she reached the table, her mother appeared like a ghost from memory, still wearing the same smile Rachel had grown up seeing, the one she used for the neighbors, not her children. There you are, sweetheart, her mother cooed. This is your spot. I hope you understand the closest tables are reserved for family and, well, the more accomplished guests. Rachel nodded, stone-faced. Oh, I understand, she said. She took her seat in the back of the room, back among strangers, surrounded by whispers. But as she looked across the ballroom, at the elegant setup, the crystal chandeliers, and the smug glances from relatives who believed every lie ever told about her, Rachel wasn't angry. She was calm, steady, and more certain than ever that she belonged somewhere far beyond any table they could assign her to. And she had a feeling. The night wasn't done surprising them. As I scanned the ballroom from my seat in the far corner, my eyes landed on the head table. There they were, my parents, seated in their usual posture of pride and control, and Lily glowing in her fitted white lace gown like she'd stepped out of a bridal magazine. She looked radiant, no doubt, but also untouched. Untouched by regret, by reflection, or by the past we both shared. I hesitated for a moment before standing. I didn't want to draw attention, but something in me needed to at least acknowledge the people who, for better or worse, raised me. My heels clicked softly across the ballroom floor as I walked past tables full of second cousins, family friends, and people who probably hadn't thought about me in years, if ever. Then my father noticed me. His conversation paused mid-sentence. His gray brows lifted, and I saw something flicker across his face. Something between surprise and unease. Rachel, he said, rising stiffly from his chair. Hi, Dad, I answered, offering a polite but distant smile. He opened his arms in an awkward half-hug, the kind you give an old colleague at a retirement party. You came? he said, as if he couldn't quite believe it. Lily invited me, I replied simply. My mother turned next. Her smile hit me first, bright and empty, like the ones she used to wear when the pastor came over for dinner. Her hands reached out and I accepted her embrace because that's what you're supposed to do. It felt like hugging a coat rack. Rachel, sweetheart, she said with honeyed warmth, we're so glad you could make it. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Then Lily turned around. Her eyes landed on me like a spotlight. For a split second, I thought I saw a flicker of emotion, something real, but it passed just as quickly. Her gaze swept over me from head to toe. Rachel, she said in a tone that tried to sound gracious but couldn't hide the thin layer of condescension. You look like yourself, kind of plain and simple, like always. She gave a smile that didn't reach her eyes. But I'm happy you're here. At least now you get to see how successful people actually celebrate weddings. I felt the sting of her words, but I didn't flinch. This was Lily's day. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of reacting. Congratulations, I said, keeping my voice even. You look beautiful. Before the air could grow any heavier, my mother stepped in and took my arm with her signature sugary urgency. Come on, honey, let me show you to your table. We walked back through the crowd, past cousins, aunts, and former neighbors, until we reached the very last table in the ballroom. It was tucked away by the emergency exit and half obscured by a massive floral centerpiece. Here you are, dear, she said with that same rehearsed grin. We put the closest family members and the most accomplished guests up front. I'm sure you understand. Oh, I understood, loud and clear. I sat down quietly, placing the Tiffany gift bag beneath my chair. The ceremony began a few minutes later, but I could barely hear the vows over the noise in my own head. Sitting there, surrounded by strangers, I found myself drifting into the past, into memories I hadn't visited in years. Growing up, it was always clear. Lily was the favorite. When she was 7 and declared she wanted to learn piano, my parents bought her a brand new upright Yamaha and paid for private lessons twice a week. When I was 14 and begged to take the free after-school coding program at school, my mother looked me straight in the eye and said, "You should focus on practical skills like cooking or laundry." Lily got princess-themed birthday parties, complete with bounce houses and custom cakes. I got a store-bought sheet cake after dinner, if they remembered. At 16, Lily was gifted a cherry red Honda Civic with a big gold bow on top. When I turned 16, I was told I could ride the bus. If I didn't like it, I could walk. But I didn't complain. I found my own way. I joined the school's programming club and spent weekends fixing neighbors' Wi-Fi and cleaning up viruses from old PCs. $20 here, $30 there, it added up. More importantly, it taught me how to stand on my own 2 feet. I applied to colleges on my own, filled out scholarship forms after school, and graduated with honors. I was proud. Then came graduation day. I remember thinking maybe, just maybe, my parents would finally be proud too. Maybe they'd say something kind. Instead, they called me into the living room and sat me down. "Rachel," my father said, folding his hands like he was about to deliver a sermon. "You're 18 now. It's time to act like an adult. We don't have money to send you to college." My mother nodded, barely looking at me. "We need to focus on Lily's future. She has real potential. And you need to move out," she added. "You can't live here anymore. Lily needs space to concentrate." The words hit like cold steel. "Move out?" I asked. "Where am I supposed to go?" "That's for you to figure out," she said flatly. "You're grown now. You should have planned ahead." I begged them. Just a few weeks. Time to find a job, save up, secure an apartment. "Number," They gave me 3 days, so I packed my life into 2 suitcases and a backpack. My best friend Emily Parker's parents were out of town and let me crash at their place while I figured things out. A week later, I got an acceptance letter from a school that offered me a full scholarship, including housing. Emily Parker's parents cried when they dropped me off at the airport and handed me a check for $3,000. "Make us proud," Mrs. Chen whispered. "Show them what they threw away." And I did. Now, sitting at this distant table in a room full of whispers and judgment, I realized something. I didn't feel shame. I felt freedom. Because the truth was about to walk into the spotlight. And this time, I wouldn't be the one looking small. 3 days. That's all the time they gave me to find a new life. I packed my entire world into 2 suitcases and a tattered old backpack. No plan, no safety net, just 18 years of rejection echoing in my ears and one tiny spark of determination in my chest. Thankfully, my best friend Emily Parker didn't even hesitate. Her parents were out of town, so she let me crash at her place until I figured things out. I was scared. I was heartbroken, but I wasn't broken. A week later, the emails I'd been holding my breath for finally landed in my inbox. 4 acceptance letters, one of them from a university in a neighboring state, offered a full scholarship, tuition, housing, even a small meal plan. I sat there on Emily Parker's couch, staring at the screen, tears spilling over. I wasn't going to be homeless. I wasn't going to be forgotten. When her parents returned, Mr. and Mrs. Chen pulled me into their kitchen and listened quietly as I told them everything. They didn't scold me for showing up. They didn't ask why my own parents hadn't helped. They simply hugged me, and then they handed me a check for $3,000. "Use it for books, a flight, whatever you need to start fresh," Mrs. Chen said, her voice shaking. "Make us proud, sweetheart. Show them what they threw away." They drove me to the airport themselves. College was hard, but it was mine. I juggled 2 part-time jobs, survived on instant ramen and caffeine, and studied every spare moment. I majored in computer science, and for the first time, I felt like I belonged. My professors saw potential, my classmates became allies, and in my 3rd year, I met Ethan Rhodes. He was sharp-witted, brilliant with code, and, just like me, came from humble beginnings. We bonded over algorithms and late-night debugging marathons. By senior year, we were inseparable. We got married in a quiet courthouse ceremony. No fancy flowers or proud parents in sight. Just 2 people chasing a dream. We moved to Silicon Valley, renting a tiny apartment and landing jobs at mid-sized tech firms. But nights and weekends were ours. We spent them building something bigger, something better. After 2 years of relentless work, sleepless nights, and mountains of takeout containers, we finished it. A software platform that revolutionized how large corporations manage their databases. Clean, scalable, elegant. Within months, we pitched it to a few major players. One of them, IBM, bit. The deal? $12 million. That single moment changed everything. With that capital, we launched our own development company. Within 5 years, we were working with Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and more. The company exploded. The money came fast, but so did the distance. Somewhere between business trips and boardrooms, Ethan Rhodes and I stopped being partners in life. We divorced amicably after 8 years, dividing everything 50-50, including the company. At 30, I was worth nearly $30 million. I owned a 5-bedroom home with a wraparound porch in Los Altos, drove a Mercedes EQS, and had been featured in both Forbes and TechCrunch. I'd even been invited to give keynotes at major tech conferences. But my family? They didn't know a thing. Because they never asked. The sudden applause in the ballroom yanked me back to the present. Lily and Brian Moore had just been pronounced husband and wife. Everyone stood, clapping politely. My parents stepped up to the mic to begin their speeches. My father's voice echoed through the room. As Lily's father, I couldn't be prouder of the woman she's become. He droned on about her marketing degree, her role at a boutique ad agency, her radiant heart. My mother followed, gushing about Brian Moore's ambition and their bright future together. It was all rehearsed and shiny, like a Hallmark movie, completely detached from reality. Then Brian Moore's parents took the stage to offer warm words and thanks. And just as my father began wrapping up, a voice cut through the air from the back of the room. "What about Rachel? Shouldn't she say something too?" It was a man's voice, confident, clear. The room fell silent. I froze. My stomach tightened. My parents' expressions darkened instantly, caught between irritation and panic. Lily's face tightened, her eyes sharp with disbelief. But with the entire room now turning to look at me, my father had no way to backpedal. "Of course," he said with a forced grin. "Rachel, would you like to say a few words?" I stood slowly, smoothing my dress as I walked toward the front of the room. My heels clicked on the ballroom floor with every step. My heart was racing, but my face didn't show it. I had spent years building a life where grace under pressure was second nature. When I reached the front, Brian Moore, Lily's new husband, stepped forward with a warm smile and held out the microphone. But then he paused. His eyes squinted slightly. He leaned in for a closer look. "Wait a second," he said, still holding the mic close to his mouth so his voice carried across the room. Are you Rachel Carter? The Rachel Carter who owns Carter Nova Systems?" The entire ballroom held its breath. I blinked and gave a modest nod. "Yes, that's me." Brian Moore's jaw practically hit the floor. "Oh my God," he said, eyes wide. "I've read about you in Forbes. You're a legend in tech. I use your software at my company. Our entire system runs on Carter's database engine." The room erupted. People turned in their chairs, whispering, gasps, heads spinning toward me like I'd just walked out of a limousine in the Oscars parking lot. Meanwhile, at the head table, my parents and Lily sat in stunned silence, faces pale, eyes locked in disbelief. And for the first time that night, I smiled, because the truth had finally walked into the room. And this time, I wasn't going to shrink to make anyone else comfortable. The moment Brian Moore said my name, my full name, the entire ballroom froze. "Rachel Carter, the Rachel Carter who owns Carter Nova Systems?" I smiled and gave a single nod. "Yes, that's me." You could have heard a pin drop right until Brian Moore, still speaking into the mic, lit up like a kid meeting a rock star. "Oh my God," he said, beaming. "I've read about you in Forbes and TechCrunch. You're a legend in the tech world. Your database software changed the way we handle enterprise data. I mean, you've worked with Google, Microsoft, Amazon. This is unreal." Gasps, whispers, heads turning. I caught a glimpse of my parents and Lily at the head table. They looked like statues, completely blindsided. My mother's fake smile was gone. My father blinked in disbelief. Lily? She looked like she just swallowed a lemon whole. I gently took the microphone from Brian Moore, who was still starstruck. "Thank you, Brian Moore. That's very kind," I said, my voice calm but steady. I turned to the crowd. "I just want to say congratulations to Lily and Brian Moore. I truly wish you both a lifetime of happiness and love." I smiled again, handed back the mic, and turned to walk back to my table in the farthest corner of the ballroom. But I hadn't even made it halfway before she appeared. "Rachel, sweetheart." My mother. Her voice had transformed, sweet as syrup, like the woman from a Hallmark movie who always came bearing cookies. She reached for my arm with a smile that suddenly looked too eager, too desperate. We have room at the main table, she said. Why don't you come sit with us? With family. I looked her right in the eye and returned a smile of my own, one that didn't reach my eyes either. No thanks, Mom. I'm comfortable where I am. And I meant it. I returned to my seat as whispers continued to swirl around the room. People craned their necks to get a better look at me. The older woman next to me leaned in. I'd been introduced to her briefly earlier, Great Aunt Ruth. I had no idea who you were, she whispered, shaking her head. Your parents? They told everyone you were living in a rundown apartment, working dead-end jobs, that your husband was some alcoholic who left you broke and alone. Suddenly, it all clicked. The pitying glances, the questions about apartments, steady jobs, and failed relationships. My parents hadn't just forgotten me. They had rewritten me. I gave Aunt Ruth a quiet smile. People say a lot of things, I said, but not all of them are true. I stayed for another hour, just enough time to be polite. Some younger guests came over, wanting to take selfies or ask about my company. A few even knew me from podcasts or blog interviews. I smiled, answered questions, shook hands, but my heart wasn't in it. The room felt toxic. I slipped out without a goodbye, called a cab, and headed straight back to the hotel. Once in my room, I didn't even change out of my dress before pulling out my laptop and booking a flight home. First class, early morning. I was done. At 9:07 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Rachel, it's Mom. I let out a slow sigh. How did you get this number? I asked. Brian Moore gave it to me. One of his friends in tech had it. Her voice was sticky sweet, sickeningly polite. Honey, we need to talk. Your father and I would love to have you over for dinner before you leave. We want to reconnect. That made me laugh. Out loud. Reconnect? Now? After all this time? After you found out I'm not a failure? That's not fair, she said quickly. We've always cared about you, Rachel. We just didn't know how to reach you. I shook my head. Number? You didn't care enough to try. That's the difference. She started in with the excuses. How they thought I needed space. How they were just respecting my wishes. Cut the crap, I said flatly. Aunt Ruth filled me in. You told everyone I was a loser. You painted me as some tragic screw-up who couldn't hold a job. And you did it because that's what you wanted to believe. We were just joking around. You know how families talk. No, I said firmly. I know how liars talk. I'm done with this conversation. And I'm done with all of you. I hung up the phone. Then I blocked the number. 15 minutes later, my phone lit up with texts. Unknown numbers. My father. Lily. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. All of them suddenly so eager to talk. I didn't open a single message. I blocked every number. And for the first time that night, I felt light. Not just successful, free. The next morning, I boarded my flight home and exhaled. I thought it was over, that the wedding was the last time I'd hear from them. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, an email landed in my inbox. This one wasn't sugar-coated with wedding roses or false sentiment. It was from Lily, and it was pure entitlement. Rachel, it began, I did some digging and found out how rich you actually are. You're worth millions while your family is struggling. We took out a $100,000 loan for my wedding, and honestly, it's only fair that you help pay it back. For someone like you, that's pocket change. You abandoned us for 10 years. This is the least you can do. Family helps family. I stared at the screen, stunned. No apology, no remorse, just a demand. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted a handout. So I replied, Lily, no. I'm not paying for your wedding or any of the reckless decisions you and our parents made. For a decade, you called me a failure. You spread lies about my life. If I was really the loser you all claimed, why are you asking me for money now? Don't contact me again. If you do, my attorney will be involved. I hit send and blocked her address. That was 6 months ago. I haven't heard a word since, and I hope I never do. I'm not bitter. If anything, I'm grateful. That wedding didn't just expose their lies, it reaffirmed the best decision I ever made, walking away. Some people don't deserve a second chance, no matter their last name. And me, I'm thriving, happier, freer, and finally, untouched by the family who once tried to define me. Life lesson: sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away with grace, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. Rachel's story is a reminder that family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by respect, truth, and effort. For over a decade, she built herself from the ground up, while her own family rewrote her as a failure. But when her success finally surfaced, they didn't apologize. They asked for money. That moment teaches us something crucial. People will try to reclaim you only when they think they can benefit from your journey, while never acknowledging the pain they caused. As we grow older, many of us face moments where we must decide who stays in our circle and who no longer deserves access. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to say no. You owe nothing to those who watched you struggle, but only showed up once you succeeded. Rachel didn't get revenge. She got freedom, and that's a kind of success money can't buy. In the end, the quiet dignity of knowing your worth and refusing to be redefined by others is the greatest legacy you can carry.